Welcome. I'm so glad to be back with you. Every story you're about to hear is real, terrifying, and sent in by listeners just like you. So, turn off the lights, wrap yourself in a blanket, grab some snacks. You're in for a night of true horror. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It truly helps and inspires us to bring you even more chilling tales. Are you ready? Then settle in, because it's time for the long-awaited scary stories for a rainy evening. The wind smelled wrong. Eloise Bertrand paused at the edge of her grandfather's orchard, clutching the rusted iron gate with trembling hands. It had been 15 years since she last stood here. 15 years since the funeral. And yet, as she stared into the tangled grove beyond, something primal inside her twisted and recoiled. The tree should have been dead. Branches hung low with heavy fruit, so abundant the limbs bowed under their weight. But the apples were wrong, misshapen, leaking a milky sap that clung to the ground like bloodless veins. Flies buzzed in lazy, drunken swarms around the swollen, pulsating fruits. Her grandfather's letter crumpled in her pocket. "Come back, Eloise. It's waiting for you." That was all it had said. No explanation, no apology for the years of silence. Just those 6 words, scribbled in a shaky hand 2 weeks before he died. Now she was here. Her boots crunched over dry gravel as she pushed the gate open. The hinges shrieked in protest, a high wail that echoed across the empty fields. She hesitated, heart hammering against her ribs, then stepped into the orchard. The air was thick, too thick. It clung to her skin like wet fabric, making every breath feel heavy. The cicadas had gone silent. Even the birds had abandoned the place. A rotten apple dropped from a nearby branch, bursting open on the ground with a wet, sickening splat. Inside, she caught a glimpse of something pale, something that wasn't seed or flesh, something that twitched. She staggered back, gagging. "Just nerves," she told herself aloud, though her voice sounded brittle. "You're tired. It's been a long drive. You're seeing things." But deep down, she knew better. Something was wrong here. Terribly, terribly wrong. The farmhouse was worse than she remembered. Shutters hung lopsided over cracked windows. The white paint had peeled away, revealing long strips of gray wood beneath. Ivy clawed up the sides of the building, strangling the porch in green coils. The door creaked open with a touch. Inside, the house smelled of dust and mildew and something sweeter, something rotting. She wandered through the empty rooms, kicking up little puffs of dust with every step. The furniture was still there, the sagging sofa, the heavy oak dining table, the grandfather clock frozen at 3:33. Everything coated in a fine layer of filth, as if the house had been abandoned for decades rather than just a few years. In the kitchen, she found the first real sign that something was deeply wrong. The pantry door was nailed shut, huge iron nails driven straight through the wood, crisscrossing like a cage. A thick black mark scrawled over the surface, a symbol she didn't recognize, something that made her eyes ache just to look at it. She shivered and turned away. The letter had said nothing about this. On the kitchen table, a battered leather journal sat waiting. Her name was scrawled on a piece of paper tucked inside. With trembling fingers, she opened it. "Eloise," the first page read, in her grandfather's cramped handwriting. "If you're reading this, then it's too late for me. But not for you. The orchard must be kept. It must be fed. You are the keeper now. If you fail, it will come for you like it came for me." She slammed the journal shut. Nope, 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 nope. She hadn't driven 8 hours for this. She hadn't left her apartment in Paris and quit her job for some crypto horror story about a haunted orchard. She was going to sell this place and get as far away as possible. Whatever madness her grandfather had succumbed to, she wasn't going to follow. But even as she tried to convince herself, A tiny voice whispered in the back of her mind, "What if it's real?" That night, Eloise dreamed of the trees. They stood in rows under a sky the color of old bruises, their twisted limbs reaching for her with hungry, grasping fingers. The apples split open like mouths, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. In the dream, she saw her grandfather standing at the edge of the orchard. He was crying. When she woke, the sheets were soaked with sweat, and the sound of scratching echoed from the pantry downstairs. Eloise spent the next morning making phone calls. She needed workers, strong men who wouldn't ask too many questions, to clear the orchard. If she wanted to sell the land, it had to look presentable. She found 3 willing souls from the nearby village of Les Chaumières. Marc Lemoine, burly and broad-shouldered, who smelled faintly of diesel and wet earth. Luc Girard, lean and wiry with a cigarette perpetually dangling from his lips. Jules Moreau, young, eager, and far too friendly for her liking. They showed up at noon, laughing and shoving each other like boys on holiday. "You sure about this place, mademoiselle?" Marc asked, eyeing the gnarled trees. "Doesn't feel right." "Just prune them," Eloise said tightly. "Clear the rotten fruit. I'll pay double if you finish today." Money always talked. The men set to work, hacking and sawing and hauling away baskets of bloated apples. The orchard seemed to groan under their assault, the branches shivering even without wind. By sundown, they were halfway done. Eloise stayed on the porch, notebook in hand, pretending to read while she watched them from a safe distance. She couldn't shake the feeling that the trees were watching her back. That night, the scratching from the pantry grew louder. At dawn, she found the first body. Luc Girard, the one with the cigarette, sprawled under the oldest tree. His eyes were wide open, mouth frozen in a silent scream. His skin had turned an awful grayish blue as if he'd been drowned, except there was no water for miles. Above him, the branches swayed gently, dropping something wet and heavy onto his chest. An apple, split open at the top like a gaping wound. Inside the torn flesh, something moved. Eloise stumbled back, bile rising in her throat. Marc and Jules were nowhere to be found. Neither answered their phones. Neither returned to the farmhouse. By afternoon, the orchard stood silent once more, except for the trees whispering in the wind. She should have been left then. She should have packed her bags and driven away without a second glance. But the journal called to her. She read by candlelight, curled in a corner of the living room while the shadows crept across the walls. "The orchard is a hunger," her grandfather had written. "It is not evil. It is not good. It simply is. As long as it is fed, it protects us. If neglected, it turns its roots outward, seeking what it needs. I made a pact. They made me the keeper. Now you must be." Pages detailed strange rituals, burying offerings at the roots, bleeding into the soil, speaking certain words at certain times. There were warnings, too, about the pantry, about the thing that lived behind it. "Never open the door," he wrote. "The hunger must be fed from the outside. If it gets loose, it will never be contained again." Eloise closed the journal with shaking hands. A floorboard creaked overhead. She was not alone. The next days bled together. She tried to leave. Twice she packed her car and drove toward the gate, only to find the road swallowed by mist so dense she couldn't see the hood of the car. Twice she returned to the farmhouse, feeling the orchard's unseen fingers brush against her skin. The trees grew bolder. At night they pressed against the windows, their branches scratching like fingernails. She heard voices in the dark, calling her name in her grandfather's voice, in her mother's voice, even in her own. And worst of all, the fruit kept growing, bigger, more grotesque. Some apples split themselves on the ground, leaking things that should not exist. Shards of teeth, slivers of bone, tiny hands curled into fists. On the 5th night, Marc Lemoine returned. He stumbled into the yard at midnight, clothes torn, face pale as moonlight. His eyes were wrong, completely black, pupil and iris swallowed whole. "Help me," he croaked. Eloise stepped back instinctively. Mark fell to his knees, retching something dark and glistening onto the dirt. From the puddle, something small and white wriggled, something like a seed, but pulsing, alive. The trees around them rustled hungrily. Mark's body convulsed once, twice, and then horrifyingly, the roots under his feet split open, swallowing him whole like a trapdoor. Only the seed remained, twitching. Eloise fled inside and bolted the door. In the journal, there was one final entry, a desperate scrawl, half mad. "When the hunger awakens, you must feed it. Give it strangers, not your own. Bring them, bury them alive at the roots. If you do not, it will choose for you." Eloise stared at the words, heart hammering. No, she wasn't a murderer. She wouldn't sacrifice innocence to save herself. But as she pressed her forehead against the cold glass, she saw them coming out of the orchard, figures with hollow eyes, dripping soil from their mouths, dragging their broken limbs across the lawn toward the house. The trees had chosen for her. The dead came for her. Eloise ran to the pantry, the journal clutched to her chest. The door was already vibrating on its hinges, something monstrous straining against it from the other side. She knew she shouldn't. She knew. But what choice did she have? The orchard had brought its champions, Mark, Luke, Jules, twisted and broken and eager to tear her apart. She could hear them outside the windows, clawing at the walls. And deep within the trees, something vast and ancient was waking. The hunger. Tears blurred her vision. Eloise placed her hand on the pantry door. "I'm sorry," she whispered. She turned the latch. The door exploded outward with a roar of fetid wind. From the darkness poured a thing that had once been human. If humans had too many arms, too many jaws, too many slick, grasping tongues. It surged forward, seizing the first revenant it touched, Mark, and dragging him, screaming into the abyss beyond. The other creatures shrieked and fled toward the orchard, but it was too late. The hunger was loose. It spread through the trees like fire through dry grass. Eloise watched from the porch as the orchard withered in moments, branches blackening, fruit shriveling, roots tearing themselves free from the earth. The sky boiled above her. She stumbled backward, coughing, as the farmhouse itself shuddered and groaned, as if trying to escape the land. Then, silence. When she awoke, the world was ash and ruin. The orchard was gone. Nothing but scorched earth remained. And standing where the pantry had been was a narrow stone arch, black as obsidian, humming with power. A gateway. A voice, her grandfather's voice, whispered in her mind, "You open the door. Now you must keep it." Eloise, the last keeper of the orchard, fell to her knees and wept beneath the hollow sky. The hunger was free, and she was its first herald. Feeling scared yet? I hope you didn't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us create even more chilling stories just for you. If you're ready, then let's continue. Get ready. The scariest part is still ahead. Arthur Morel checked into the Hotel Saint-Michel on a rain-slicked evening in Lyon. The building was ancient, its stone facade blackened by centuries of storms. The concierge, an old woman with hands like gnarled tree roots, gave him the key to room 213 without meeting his gaze. "No guests in that wing, monsieur," she warned. "No mirrors either." Arthur thought it strange, but exhaustion won over curiosity. He climbed the creaking stairs and found room 213 at the end of a narrow hallway, the electric bulbs flickering overhead. Inside, bare floors, a lumpy bed, a single armchair, and portraits. Dozens of them, men and women, children and old folk, all rendered in grim gray oil paints. Their eyes followed him as he crossed the room. He tried to sleep. He failed, because the faces in the paintings changed when he wasn't looking. At midnight, Arthur woke to a soft knock at the door. He froze. Another knock, softer, almost polite. He rose and peered through the peephole. Nothing. But when he turned back to the room, one of the portraits, an old man with a weeping eye, was missing from the wall. His frame lay empty. Arthur checked the bathroom, the closet, under the bed. Nothing. But when he turned off the light, he heard footsteps across the wooden floor. Slow, dragging footsteps. And a whisper, wet and sibilant, in his ear. "You should not have come here." Arthur discovered the truth by accident. Hidden behind the dresser was a crumbling newspaper from 1912. Hotel Saint Michel opens its doors after tragedy. 47 guests missing. An entire floor had vanished in one night. No bodies were ever found. Some said the original owner, a failed painter named Henri Vallon, had made a pact to trap the souls of the guests in his canvases, paintings that hungered for new faces. Arthur realized with growing horror that his reflection was fading. Every glance at the mirror showed him less human, his eyes duller, his skin grayer. He was becoming a painting. Arthur fled the room at dawn, suitcase in hand, but the hotel twisted around him, the stairs endless, the doors leading back to room 213 no matter where he turned. The portraits grinned at him now, teeth sharp and shining in the dim light. Finally desperate, he smashed the largest painting, the weeping old man, with a chair. It bled, thick, tar-like blood that smelled of old earth and rotting leaves. The hotel shuddered, walls cracked, ceilings sagged. Arthur sprinted for the lobby, slipping on blood-slick floors. He burst into the daylight, real daylight, and ran, never looking back. He moved to Paris, changed his name, never stayed in hotels again. But late at night, when exhaustion dulled his senses, he sometimes caught a glimpse of a familiar figure in the corner of his eye. A man in an old-fashioned coat with weeping eyes and blood on his hands. A man who smiled and stepped closer every night. Arthur realized too late he hadn't escaped. He had merely brought the hotel with him. Still with us, or too scared to stay? If you haven't yet, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It keeps the darkness whispering new tales your way. Now, if you're brave enough, let's dive even deeper. The true horror is just beginning. Mira Lefebvre, journalist for Le Monde, was sent to cover the restoration of the abandoned Saint Laurent Bell Tower in Normandy. The tower had been silent for 2 centuries, ever since the townspeople had sealed it after a series of gruesome deaths. "We don't talk about the tower," the mayor warned her. "It remembers those who listen." Naturally, Mira listened. At first, she heard it only at night, a faint chiming, like tiny silver bells swinging in the wind. But the tower's doors were sealed tight, chained and padlocked. She set up camp nearby, determined to catch whoever was sneaking around. At 3:03 a.m., she heard the bells again. This time, the whispers came too. They spoke her name, softly, tenderly, calling her names. Digging into old town records, Mira found a horrifying pattern. Every century, the tower opened itself, and every century, 7 souls vanished. Their bodies never found, only their shoes left at the base of the tower steps. The bells would ring only for those marked to die. She tried to dismiss it, tried to leave, but her shoes, the ones she had left by her tent, had moved overnight, placed neatly at the base of the bell tower, waiting. On the 7th night, the tower doors stood open. She had not seen anyone open them. She had not heard the chains break, but the dark maw of the entrance beckoned her. The bells chimed softly, almost lovingly. Tears filled Mira's eyes. Her feet moved on their own. She tried to resist, but the wind pushed her forward, carrying the whispers of thousands of lost souls. "Join us," they said. "We have waited so long." She entered. When the townspeople checked the tower in the morning, it was sealed again. No one spoke of the missing journalist. No one wanted to. But if you dared stand close enough to the door, you might hear it. A new bell, smaller than the others, chiming softly in the morning mist, and a new voice whispering in the wind, Mira Lefebvre, home at last. You're still here, or has fear already taken you away? If you haven't yet, leave a like and subscribe. Your support breathes life into the darkest stories. I hope we'll meet again soon. Next time, even darker and more terrifying secrets await you. Come back soon while I prepare new nightmares that will haunt your sleep.